Hey, I want to show you a debate or an exchange between Konstantin Kisin and this guy Bunnell. I think his name is Stephen Bunnell. He goes by the name Destiny, and he's a popular debater. And the reason I want to show it to you is not because of the subject matter they're debating, but because it revealed something very powerful about the culture and the civilization and the moment that we're in, and a lot of the issues that we talk about preserving Western civilization came clear to me watching this exchange. Okay, so let's take a look, and then I'll have something to say about it.
Can national identity survive open immigration?
I guess I'll kind of take the reins on this. I feel like when I hear people talk about things related to open borders, mass migration, or national identity, there's kind of two questions that always pop up in my mind, and I never hear people actually kind of tack down what they mean when they say these things. So the first thing is, for national identity, I don't know as much about the various identities that exist in the UK, but I know for the United States, to try to find an overlap between identity from a gay guy in San Francisco versus like a farmer in Iowa or something, there's not many commonalities there to speak of when you talk about national identity, especially when I'm thinking of it in the context of what type of immigrant would threaten that whatever unified identity, whatever those two things are. So I'm kind of curious, I guess, when I think about national identity, when I think about it being threatened by people, my first question is, what is the national identity that we're trying to protect for the United States or for the United Kingdom? And then when we talk about like migration or mass migration, what do we mean exactly when we say that?
Well, okay. So there's two questions there. What is national identity and what is immigration? Why don't we start in reverse and talk about immigration? Take Britain as an example, right? So I've lived in this country. I came to Britain it was just about Russia. Prior to that, it was the Soviet Union in 1996. So let's go back to 1991, because that's the data when we have the census. 1991. What has happened in the last 35 years? So in the last 35 years ago, this country had a population of 58 million people. Today, the population is 70 million. Almost all of that is due to mass immigration. So the population of Britain, the immigrant population of Britain, that's first generation, people who've arrived, went from 4 million to 12 million in the space of 35 years, right? It trebled in 35 years. Now, you might say, well, is that a lot? Is that a little? Who knows? That is more people, in the last 35 years, more people came to Britain than came to Britain in the previous 2 millennia. So more people in 35 years than had come in 2,000 years. Now, that seems like quite a lot, right? Now, we'll talk about some more facts about this, and we can talk about national identity. I'm going to take a little time, if you don't mind, just to lay this out.
Yeah, I guess just to kind of poke around as you answer.
Yeah, but hold on. Let me just just let's talk about what we mean by immigration, right?
Okay. Well, then also the mass, because I hear a lot of these words will be like, it was a lot of people.
Well, hold on.
I was like, what does that mean? Yeah.
I'm explaining it. So
Okay.
more people in 35 years than 2,000 years, that sounds like quite a lot of people. Is
Not
that fair?
necessarily, no.
Is that fair?
No, not really, right? In the
Not
context,
really.
like if I were to ask for like the total growth of wealth compared to like the last like 50 years might also dwarf the last 2,000 years, or the total amount of carbon pollution, or the total amount of TV episodes or plays written or songs written. Like, I don't know if I would just arbitrarily say, I'm going to look at immigration, and I'm going to measure it past some 1,000-year thing or whatever.
You don't think that more people coming into a country in 35 years than had come in the previous 2,000 years is quite a lot?
I just think that statement is like vacuous and meaningless. When we say quite a lot, should it have been less? Like, what kind of immigrants shouldn't have come? No. What does that mean?
You're making it into a moral conversation. I'm talking about purely numbers. You might think it's a great thing, right? Like,
well, to be clear, I'm not talking. Just to be clear, I'm not talking moral.
You keep interrupting.
You said a lot, yeah.
You keep interrupting. So,
okay.
If we're talking about quite a lot, you keep trying to make it a moral thing.
I'm not making it a moral thing.
If we're going to have a conversation, you're going to have to let me finish a sentence at least.
Well, just don't misquote my position.
Okay, so just calm down for a bit.
I'm super calm.
I know you've got your Red Bull. Just have some
I have my
water,
Red Bull.
chill
I'm
out.
still super calm.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a very simple question. Yeah.
If more people, if you're making a moral issue, it becomes very clouded and complicated. Let's just talk about what we're talking about in terms of pure numbers, right? If more people have come into a country in 35 years than have come in 2,000 years, that is objectively a lot. Now, you might think it's a good thing. Like, I like ice cream, and if I eat a tub of ice cream, I'm not going to say that's not a lot of ice cream. I still like it, but it's a lot of ice cream, right? We'd accept that. It's more, a scoop is not a lot of ice cream, a tub is a lot of ice cream. So more people coming into a country in 35 years than had come in 2,000 years is objectively a lot of people, okay?
Just to be clear, when you say a lot, that's a normative value that's with respect to some kind of norm or when you say a lot.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
compared to before.
Yeah,
Compared
that's
to the entire
objectively,
span
yeah,
of the
that is
history of this
objectively true. It's just kind of a meaningless
Well, thank
statement.
you.
Like
So you've
everything is
accepted-
a lot
you've
more
accepted
than the
that
past
what I'm saying is
2 millennia.
objectively
Yeah.
true. I'm grateful.
Correct, yes. That's
So-
a meaningless statement, but yes.
Now that we've got there, what does it mean? Well, first of all, think about it like this. And again, it's not about whether you like it or not, whether you think it's a good thing or not, or a bad thing. The 3 biggest cities in this country in the last 30 years have ceased to be majority inhabited by the people who are native to this land. That's just a fact. And I am one of the people who's come here in that time. So I'm not saying it's only a terrible thing, but it's an objective fact. The 3 biggest cities in the country are now majority minority. London, and this has happened very quickly. London was 80% white British in 1991. It is probably around 30% white British today. So if you have seen that level of change in the city in which you live, think about this as well. 3/4 of the people who live in this country today are over the age of 35. So all of this has happened within the lifetime of 1 generation, effectively. That is a level of change that is A, completely unprecedented, B, extremely transformative, whether you like it or not, good or bad, whatever you may think. You might think, oh, you know, the amount of different kinds of food has got better. It's true, objectively. But it's also true, objectively, that entire swathes of this city are no longer inhabited by the people who used to live here. Again, this is an objective fact. You can like it, you can dislike it, but that is something that has happened. This is true of London, it's true of Manchester, it's true of Birmingham, and it's true of several other smaller cities in this country. By 2060, according to current projections, white British people will become a minority in this country. 2060 is the next 35 years, right? And that's the entire kind of demographic transformation. These are facts. Forget about people's opinions, my opinion, your opinion. In terms of illegal immigration, there are now almost 1 million, we don't know exactly because it's hard to measure, but we have almost 1 million illegal immigrants in Britain today, which for a population of 70 million is quite a lot. We currently spend £14 million a day I'm not talking about the cost to the taxpayer of having 1 million illegal immigrants here. I'm talking about how much we spend to accommodate them and all other things. Now, 14 million, is that a lot per day? It's quite a lot. But also this is happening at an unprecedented rate. More people come to Britain illegally today than came legally when I came here in 1996. I'll say that again. More people come here illegally every year than came here in 1996 when I came here. That's the level of change when it comes to illegal immigration, and the cost of it, £14 million a day, is increased by a factor of 10 in the last 10 years alone. So it's 1,000% more than what it was. Those are the facts about immigration. So when we talk about immigration and whether it's compatible with national identity, it depends what we mean. If we're talking about 20, 30, 40,000 people a year, highly selective from compatible cultures as it used to be, perfectly compatible, and in fact, I think probably quite desirable. If we're talking about what we've seen over the last 30 years, I don't think it's compatible with any sort of national identity at all. Now, I've been talking for a long time, so we can get to national identity after you've addressed that.
Sure. So I guess the thing that is a little bit strange to me about the immigration question is that sometimes I'll hear a bunch of descriptions laid out, and I don't know exactly what I'm supposed to do with them. There's oftentimes a lack of a prescriptive statement. It seems like there's a little bit of fear of committing to any particular idea about what an ideal immigrant would look like. And then it feels like we're sometimes also lumping a ton of immigrants together. So for instance, when we say there have been so many more immigrants that have come here in the past 30, 35 years, but then we also mention like illegal immigrants or asylum seekers, these are all different groups of people. So I don't know why. I
separated them out. I talked about legal immigration and illegal immigration, right?
I understand, but so the prompt has to do with basically can a country's culture, whatever, survive mass migration? Illegal immigrants are not mass migrating here. The mass migration.
They are.
So
I just told you more illegal immigrants come here every year now than legal immigrants came here 30 years ago.
I understand that, but if you look
they
at
are mass migrating.
So then are the legal ones mass migrating, or what? Is it just...
The legal immigrants are also mass migrating. It's possible for them
But
both
it's
to be
like
mass
10 to
migrating.
1, right? So
Yes.
so comparing the two, it seems like we're talking about different kinds of, we're probably talking about different kinds of immigrants. We talk about legal versus illegal.
We're talking
and-
about both, yeah.
Well, no,
I'm talking about both.
you don't see any difference between a legal immigrant versus an illegal immigrant.
Well, of course I do.
Okay.
But they are both mass migrating here. They're both coming here in unprecedented numbers.
Everything definitionally is unprecedented as you move forward in years. We have an unprecedented amount of technology, an unprecedented amount of energy generation, an unprecedented amount of
I think you might be confused about the meaning of the word unprecedented.
Unprecedented as in it hasn't happened at that level before. Yeah.
Right. So if we have immigration of 20,000 people a year, that wouldn't be unprecedented because we had that before.
Yeah, but the population is growing of the country, the population of the rest of the planet is growing, the economy is growing, there's a whole bunch of other factors at play. It's not like all else equal, there's just 10 million people that have shown up. Like there's other factors at play at all points in time as well. So
Yes,
it's a bit reductive to say like, well, we have an unprecedented wave of whatever. There's unprecedented things happening definitionally every year forward into the future we go.
No, that's
yes.
not true.
And what's the thing that's been frozen in time?
I just explained it to you.
Yes, you laid out a bunch of numbers, and I just explained why they're
I
contextless and meaningless. But now I'm asking, what is the thing that's unprecedented?
Look,
or I'm sorry, what would be a thing that is not changing in the past 30 years? Like if you had to look at something.
One of the most amazing things of arguing with anybody from your position is the extent to which they refuse to understand what words mean. I just explained to you repeatedly what unprecedented means. It means that it hasn't happened before. There have been times in the history of this country when its immigration was in the tens of thousands, and for us to go back to that would not be going forward to something unprecedented. It would be returning to something that we used to do.
Sure.
Right?
And my question
and so
is,
what has happened in the last 30
I understand
years
what's happened. You've explained it
is
several times.
unprecedented.
Is there anything in U.S. culture, in British culture, that has remained the same for the past 30, 40, 50, 60 years, for the past 100 years, that doesn't have an unprecedented thing happening constantly?
Absolutely. I mean, that is what a culture is. It is what is preserved over time.
How?
A culture is what people do without having been told to do so by a law.
But what is an example of a culture that is unchanging?
How much have you traveled around the world?
Probably more than you?
Probably not, actually.
Okay. So then you should be able to very easily answer.
I'm
Here's an
about
example
to.
of a culture that exists.
Well, every time I try and answer your question, you keep talking over
Well, it's
me.
because when you answer, you ramble and say irrelevant things. So my question
How
is
can
like,
I ramble in half a sentence?
you've been saying plenty of sentences. Do you think the speaking time up to this point is even, or do you think you've spoken more than me?
I have spoken more than you, but I haven't
Exactly. So
interrupted
then you've had an opportunity to speak. You're just not answering my question. So my question is very simple. What's a culture that you feel has been unchanged for the past 50 years? Or what is an example of cultural preservation? I feel like cultures are evolving all the time. It's definitionally a part of culture.
Of course. Cultures are evolving all the time, but if you were to be plonked in 1970s Afghanistan and 1990s Afghanistan and 2010s Afghanistan and 1950s Britain, 1970s Britain and 2010s Britain, there would be common themes that run through both of those places so that you would instantly recognize, I am in Afghanistan, I am in Britain. Would you accept that?
I agree that different cultures are different, yes.
Right, well done. Good. So we've got there then.
Okay. Before we go on with what I have to say about this, I just want to share this. You know, obviously we all know that there's a war going on, and there are many families across Israel. Kids are at home from school because the schools are closed because of the airstrikes, and that means that there's a lot more stress on families. There's been a big call up of reservists, and that means there's a lot of young mothers at home with their children. And Israel 365 has been at the forefront since the beginning of the war of taking care of families, widows of fallen Israeli soldiers, wives of soldiers who are fighting in reserves, and now dealing with a lot of the needs of families that are in places that have been attacked. In Beit Shemesh, the town where I live, many homes were destroyed in a ballistic missile strike that also killed quite a number of people. There's a lot of people suffering from PTSD. And for all of these needs, Israel 365 is stepping up with a charity project to help those who are affected by this war. So if you go to Israel365charity.com, Israel365charity.com, scroll down to the current projects. And the first project there now is Israel at War, Help Now. And, please donate now. It's very important. It's very timely. And it's a way that you can participate in helping Israelis who are struggling deal with what's happening in the war right now. So please go ahead and do that. Israel365charity.com. Now, for what I have to say about this. So the real issue here isn't immigration, okay? And that's why I didn't want to talk about this video because I wanted to talk about what they're saying about immigration. What you're seeing here is a clash between two completely different ways of thinking about reality. And I learned a lot about like the problems we're having, like, you know, people on the right, like myself, you look at the people on the left and you're like, how can we even talk to these people? So Konstantin here was doing something very simple. He's describing observable facts. He's saying, here are the numbers, here's the demographic change, here's the speed at which it happened. And Destiny's response is fascinating, right? He doesn't really challenge the facts. Instead, he challenges whether the facts mean anything. You hear it over and over again. Is that really a lot? What does a lot mean? Everything's unprecedented. What is culture anyway? Can you define it? All of these questions are not arguments about immigration. They're a philosophical method. And this is very much the postmodern method. It's how we got to where we are in our culture. The goal of this method is not to prove that something is good or bad. The goal is to make it impossible to have a judgment about whether anything is good or bad. I hope that made sense. Let me explain. Let's just watch what happens step by step in this video. Konstantin says more people came in 35 years than in the previous 2,000 years. Destiny responds by saying, not that that's wrong, but instead he says that it's meaningless. Why? Because the word a lot supposedly requires a normative framework. In other words, unless we can produce some perfectly precise philosophical definition of a lot, the observation itself becomes meaningless. Okay, this is classic relativism. What you do basically is you take a normal human observation that every normal person would immediately understand, like, oh, that smells bad, or that smells good, right? And you dissolve it into an endless semantic fog. And you notice what happens when Konstantin moves to the topic of culture, right? Destiny says, well, what's culture? Can you define it? Give me an example of a culture that doesn't change. Again, the strategy, Destiny's strategy isn't to understand the concept, right? The strategy is to make the concept impossible to define and therefore impossible to even talk about, right? If culture changes, then culture doesn't exist. If a lot requires a philosophical framework, then nothing is a lot. If identity is complicated, well, then identity is meaningless, right? That's the intellectual move. And it's the reason that conversations between what we call conservatives and progressives often feel like we're speaking completely different languages, right? Traditional thinking, what we would call conservative thinking, unfortunately, that's what we would call it today, it assumes something very basic. Reality exists, human beings can observe it, and there are judgments that people can make about it that are just rational and they make sense, and their truth just lies in the fact that they are observable and universal, right? We could disagree about those judgments, but the judgments themselves are legitimate judgments. Progressive postmodern thinking works very differently. It treats every concept as unstable. Every definition is arbitrary. Every judgment is suspect, right? So instead of debating what's true or what is good, which is what philosophers used to do, the debate shifts to whether anything can be defined or judged at all. Once you reach that point, any discussion, any basis for discussion just collapses. Because if nothing can be defined, then nothing can be evaluated. And if nothing can be evaluated, then everything is equally meaningless. That's what you're seeing in this exchange. That's why I thought it was so helpful, because when we talk about concepts like postmodernism and moral relativism, sometimes they're hard to pinpoint. And here in this exchange, you actually see it. You see it on display. Because this wasn't a debate about immigration. It was a debate about whether we can have a debate about immigration. It was a debate about whether we can even understand the world we live in. And that's the deeper problem here. You see, if you can't define your civilization, don't be surprised when you have no will to defend it. All right, thanks for watching, everyone. Hope you're finding these videos helpful. Please drop me a comment. Let me know what you think of what I had to say here. And any advice you have for me to improve the channel, improve what I'm doing, I try to read as many comments as I can. Thank you so much. Keep watching. God bless.